Well, hello everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Will's here as well.
Hey guys.
There he is. He tells me everything looks good, so hopefully he's right. So remember, we are doing our series Eliminate on these nights when you are with your groups. So last time we talked about eliminating sin. Now obviously that's one that no one's going to argue with. Who's going to argue against getting rid of sin? You're not going to hear a pastor show up at a church or something to be like, here's reasons you should sin. No, of course we want to eliminate that. But it's not the only thing we should eliminate. The verse we're going to start off looking at tonight is Hebrews 12:1, verse you've probably heard before or familiar with. It says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us." So, if we're going to be in this race, we got to get rid of that sin that clings closely. But it also says there, notice, every weight. So what else do we got to get rid of? What are the other things we need to eliminate? What are the other weights? Well, tonight what we're going to look at is we need to eliminate distractions. That's right. In our pursuit of Jesus, there are things that are going to be distracting us from that. Now, let me preface this by saying we can't obviously eliminate every single distraction that we have because that just wouldn't work. You could be like, good things can distract sometimes. Sometimes things can pop up. My wife and kids distract me sometimes, but in a good way. So these are things we can't get rid of every single distraction. We have to just get rid of the things that lead to excuses in our faith. The things that distract us and we say, well, I couldn't because. I don't have time to pray. I don't have time to read the Bible. I don't have time to fill in the blank. Well, because I'm just so busy. I got so much going on. I got this, I got that. There's certain distractions that maybe we need to get rid of. And those are really just excuses. All of us have the same 24-hour container of time. We all have that in a day. That's what a day is. So we all have to utilize, we have to prioritize what's going to get the most of our attention. Now, there are things that we allow to distract us from God. There's things that we allow to distract us from our relationships with others. There's things that we allow to distract us from being who God made us to be. But as we're talking about this tonight, make sure you understand there's kind of two filters that we're going to use. First off, what are you in control of? What are the things in your life that you can actually control? And not only that, but what are the things that are hindering your pursuit of Jesus? So look at it from those 2 points of view. You could say schoolwork is a distraction. Many of you would probably agree. If I just didn't have school, if I didn't have math, I could follow Jesus so much better. That might be true, but you have to do that. That's just how it is. Right now, school is part of your job. Other things, you could be like, well, those chores my parents asked me to do, that's a distraction. It is getting in the way of my pursuit of Jesus. Yeah, well, part of your pursuit of Jesus is honoring your parents, so nice try, not going to work. There's lots of things that we can say distract us, but what are the things that you are actually in control of, that you can actually eliminate? The things that you put there that do distract you, that get in the way, that you can get rid of. Things like, I don't know, maybe, your phone, social media, things like that. We'll get to that in a little bit. Things that are in your power to get rid of. Now let's go back to our definitions real quick too. When we're talking about eliminate means to completely remove or get rid of. And I love this. Another definition for eliminate is to murder. So we're talking about eliminating some distractions, taking them out, getting rid of them, getting completely gone. These things that are distracting us from following Jesus. Finding them and eliminating them. Like I said, sin is a super easy one to agree on. Yeah, of course, we have to do that. But distractions, I think, might actually be a little bit more dangerous because it's so subtle, because it's so sneaky. We all know sin's bad, but distractions, well, those aren't that bad, right? It's not a big deal. I'm not sure how many of you have heard about this or participate, but in our house we do this thing that we heard about called Ohm Connect. And what that is basically every so often we get like a text message and it says, hey, it's going to be an Ohm hour. So during that hour, turn off any devices you can, to make power less in your house, and you'll get rewards for it. Basically, they give you a few bucks kind of a thing. So it's like, it's something to do. It's a weird thing, though, because we live in California, this is an issue. We have family in Ohio and Washington, other places. They're like, you do what? You guys don't have enough power? That's weird. It is weird. But we do it anyways. Now, right away, when we started doing this, we would do the big things, right? Turn off all the lights in the house. That obviously uses power. Unplug the refrigerator for an hour. That's going to be a lot of power. But we still weren't hitting a huge percentage of reducing our power during that hour. And so I looked it up and I found out that there's actually something called phantom power. Look at that guy. It's pretty scary, right? Phantom power is when something is plugged in and it's not even on, but it's still drawing power. a toaster, a microwave, a coffee pot, even chargers for phones and other devices that aren't even plugged into those devices. They're drawing power. So we go around, we unplugged all those things too, and suddenly we were doing much better. See, it wasn't the obvious things that was drawing the most power. It was a lot of these little things that we didn't even think about, these things that really were just like, oh, probably not that big of a deal. Oftentimes, I think the bigger danger for Christians today isn't just necessarily the big sin issues. We know to avoid those, and those are a danger, certainly. But sometimes the more subtle and sneaky danger is distraction. There's a quote that it's been attributed to a lot of different people. I don't know exactly who said it, but essentially it just says, if the devil can't make you bad, he'll make you busy. If he can't get you to sin, well, he'll just distract you. Because either way, as long as he can get your focus off of God onto something else, he's happy. So when it comes to eliminating the distractions, the first thing we want to do, we want to eliminate the things that distract us from following Jesus, the things that are getting in the way. Now, once again, I'm not saying like, well, my little brother, he distracts me from following Jesus. I got to take him out. I got to eliminate him. No, that's not a good idea. Don't do that. Don't quit school. Don't do those things. But what are the things that are getting in your way that are your choice? What are the things that are slowing you down because you've chosen to pick them up that maybe you shouldn't have? And they might not be bad things in and of themselves. A story that I love telling is in 1314 in England, there was this huge threat to national security in England. And what was happening, like the youth of the nation, they were being led astray. Even adults were shirking their responsibilities. It was like, what are we going to do about this? So this king, Edward II, he had a plan. He said, okay, here's what we're going to do. He made the sport of soccer illegal. That's right. Save the nation, guys. Save the nation. Here's what he said. We command and forbid, on behalf of the king, on pain of imprisonment, such games to be used. So you might say, well, maybe Edward II just hated soccer for some reason. Well, it wasn't just him. Edward II, and then also Edward III, Richard II, Henry IV, all of them banned soccer. In 1547, 143 years later, King James II of Scotland also banned soccer. And he threw in golf, too, just for good measures. Let's get rid of that one also. And then in 1491, there was a decree of Scotland, King James IV, and here's what he said. It is statute and ordained, in no place of the realm, there be used football, golf, or other unprofitable sports. That's right. He wanted to get rid of all unprofitable sports. You'll notice basketball was not mentioned there. He considered these things unprofitable, not because of what they were in and of themselves, but because what was happening is these sports were distracting guys from archery practice. And they all knew if in peacetime you're not training, getting ready with archers, when war comes, you're going to be in trouble. So without trained archers, what were they going to do? So they had to get rid of these things. So is soccer bad in and of itself? Of course it is. No, just kidding. It's fine. It's a fine thing, right? It's nothing wrong with it. But what was happening, it was distracting from something more important. So there's probably lots of things in our lives, they're not bad in and of themselves, but are they distracting us from Jesus? Are they distracting us from something more important? Look what it says in James 1:22. But be doers of the word, not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. Hearing is important. We got to do that. Reading the Bible, listening to it, that's all important. But we also have to act on what we hear. We have to actually do it. We have to do what it says. We all know that story about the guy who built his house in the rock and one who built his house in the sand, and obviously don't do the sand one. We know that story, but the context of that story is hearing and doing. This is what Jesus said in Matthew 7:24. Everyone then who hears these words of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house on the rock. He's saying right there, if you hear and do what I say, then you're like this wise man. That's the context. So hearing is important. We have to actually do it. If the word of God is really taking root in our lives, then actions will follow. That's just how it works. We can say we love Jesus. We can call ourselves Christians, but are we actually following? That's the question. James 4:17 says, whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him it's sin. It's not just like the things that we shouldn't do, but it's also what are we supposed to do. If we say we love Jesus, but we're not actually following him, we're only fooling ourselves. Do you spend time with him? Do you pray? Do you read the Bible? Do you have a quiet time? Whatever it is, do you connect? Do you make time with God a priority at some points in your day? There's a study that was done in 2019. So this is before the pandemic, keep in mind. In 2019, this study said that 13 to 18-year-olds, most of you, spend on average 7.7 hours on a screen for entertainment. Not school, not anything like that, but just for entertainment. Almost 8 hours, a third of your day. So if you spend 8 hours sleeping which some of you, let's be honest, do more, and if you spend another 8 hours on your screen, it's like that's like more than half of your day that you are awake on entertainment. Now, once again, nothing bad in of itself, and let me just say, I'm not just picking on 13 to 18-year-olds. This is true of adults as well. Adults on average spend about 3.5 hours on their phones and about 3 hours on TV. So about 6.5 hours on screens, not work-related. So it's not great there either. All across, pretty bad. So it's a distraction, right? But are we even aware of the distraction? That's the thing we have to ask. Are we aware of what's happening? I mean, if you're bored at a place for 2 seconds, what do? I'm willing to bet most, if not all of you, reach for your pocket and pull out your phone. And you probably don't even realize it most of the time. You're just looking. What are you looking at? It's not like you're like looking for something. It's just, well, I'm bored. It's okay to be bored. That most of human history, people were bored, and it worked out just fine. It's okay. But we are now more able to distract ourselves. What if just 1 out of every 10 times you were going to reach for your phone, just 1 out of 10, what if instead you stopped and just connected for a moment to God? How would that change your spiritual life? One thing I've done over the years that's really been helpful for me is just a really simple thing. That throughout the day, what I do, I stop, I be quiet, and I make a connection. So it could be while I'm driving at a stoplight, it could be when I'm buckling in the car, it could be when I'm walking to my office to unlock the door. I just, for a moment, stop, I'm quiet, and just make a connection. It could be that simple. But how often do we even do those things? How often do we make connecting to God a priority? The truth is, distractions get in the way of following Jesus. And some things we can't just help. Sometimes distractions pop up and they're out of our control. But what are the ones that we can do something about? Now, not only do things distract us from following Jesus, but they kind of distract us from another thing that we're supposed to do too. So what we also need to do, we need to eliminate the things that distract us from meaningful relationships. Things that get in the way of actually connecting to others. Once upon a time, there was a time where people would do this thing called talk. So usually if they were bored, instead of just staring at a screen, they would ask someone a question like, hey, how are you? Or if it was a stranger, hey, hi, I'm so-and-so, where are you from? Those were things that used to take place. Smartphones were not always a thing. Now, for most of you, they have always been a thing. For me, I was 18 when I first got a cell phone, and it was a phone. Like, you would have minutes. It was like, I have 200 minutes, and I wouldn't use any of them because I didn't really use it that much, and there was no such thing as texting or screens. It was just buttons on a little like display. I mean, it was not what it is now. And again, that was most of human history, but most of your history, this has been a reality. This has been a thing. Now, I've been in youth ministry for quite a while. So I grew up going to church. I was in youth group. As soon as I graduated, right away afterwards, I went and I worked at a church doing youth right away. So I've been doing this for a while. And growing up, there used to be this thing, we'd go on trips, we'd do things like we do now, but the difference was we would talk to each other. And one of the first groups that I took, we went to a conference and we were staying in a hotel, and there was meals that we'd have together in between the sessions and stuff. And instead of sitting around a table and talking, what I saw over and over again was this. Yes, I took pictures because it was so shocking to me at the time. That they would just sit there all with their phones out, not talking. Silence, but phones out. Everyone phones out. I was like, there's people across and next to you and around, and you can talk to them. These kind of things are distracting us from actually connecting to each other. And that's a problem. We don't want that to happen. Now, let me make it clear too, I'm not like against technology. Obviously, I'm recording this on an iPhone. I have a computer right here. I mean, all of this technology can be helpful as well. I love the fact that on my phone, my parents who now live in Ohio, I can FaceTime them and they can see me. I can see them. They can see their grandkids. I love that. That actually fosters connection. But we have to be careful too, because sometimes they can do the opposite. So again, I'm not against technology. I'm not against any of these things, but is it drawing us closer to others, or is it drawing us away from others? One of the many reasons that my wife Megan is so amazing is that she plays Call of Duty with me. Now, she didn't always do this. When we got married, she was not really into video games, but I was, so she sacrificed for me and learned and became pretty good at it, actually. But the cool thing was, when we moved away from like the friends we grew up with, we could still get online. They all had Call of Duty also. And we'd get on for like an hour or so. We'd get our headsets on. We'd be talking, playing Call of Duty, but really talking about our day, about our lives, how work was going. And it was actually helping us connect, even though we were just playing a video game. That's great. But now imagine if it was the opposite. Imagine if for hours on end, I got on there, pulled away from my wife and kids, not talking to friends, was just doing it by myself. Is that fostering connection or relationship? That's what I'm saying about any of these things. They can go either way. They're all neutral, but what we do with them is what matters. Are they making connection, or are they making less connection? John 13:24, Jesus says, "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another just as I have loved you. You also are to love one another." See, we're called to love one another. And if we are constantly pulling away, constantly withdrawing, letting distractions get in the way, then we're not going to be doing the thing that we're called to do. So one more area I want to look at, what we also need to do, we need to eliminate what distracts you from being who God made you to be. Now, right off the bat, obviously, this is a tricky one, because the odds are none of you, any of us really, know exactly who God made us to be, what he made us to do. But we can go to the things that we know for sure, the things that God definitely wants us to do, the things he definitely made us to do. There's that story in Matthew when Jesus was asked, what's the most important law? And so he answers in Matthew 22:37-40. He says, well, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. The second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. So to really easily and simply sum it up, what he was saying is, okay, love God and love others. And don't let things get in the way of doing that. Those should be the things we should be pursuing, the things we should be going after. 100%, that's your job. Start right there. I mean, just imagine if everyone filtered like their social media use through those two filters. Loving God, loving others. It would look quite a bit different, let's be honest. The comments would look different. The way that people text, the way people DM each other, all those things would look very different. James 1:26 says, if anyone thinks he's religious and doesn't bridle his tongue, he deceives his heart. And this person's religion is worthless. So again, he's saying, watch what you say, but in today's times, we have to say, watch what you text, watch what you comment, watch all those things. And James doesn't sugarcoat it, just like Jesus didn't. He just flat out says, look, if your faith doesn't work, if it's not doing what it's supposed to do, then it's worthless faith. And who would want to have a worthless faith? You can't just think that you're religious. You have to actually show it. You can't just say the right words. You have to actually show it. It's not just about what you do, but why you do it as well. All those things go together. There's a guy who was named Joshua Abraham Norton. You might not have heard of him, but he's a pretty important guy because he was the first and only emperor of the United States. That's right. And he reigned from a place called San Francisco. So obviously that's not true. He's not actually an emperor, but he thought he was. In 1859, he proclaimed himself Norton I, Emperor of the United States, and he began his 21-year reign. Now, I didn't know that's how it worked to become an emperor, but apparently that's all you got to do. Now, later on, in 1863, he decided to also add Protector of Mexico, just for good measure. So, Emperor of the United States and Protector of Mexico. Now, really, who this guy was, he was a businessman, and he lost his entire fortune investing and selling rice to China. That's right. They already have that, it turns out. So, not a great investment. He lost everything. And one day, for whatever reason, we don't know if he went crazy, if he was just being funny, whatever it was, he declares himself emperor. But here's the thing, San Francisco played along for the most part. He even printed his own money, and stores would accept it. This was the thing that went on for a while. But even with that being the case, he was never actually the emperor. When it says here, what James is talking about being religious, it just speaks to just the things that we do on the outside. You can act like an emperor, but you're not actually an emperor. We can say the right words, we can pretend that we're a Christian, but unless we're actually following Jesus, then we're not. So we can apply this to our speech as well. Is our speech impure? Is it critical? Is it full of anger? Is it complaining? Is it judgmental? Is it gossiping? Is it slandering? What is that betraying about what's inside of us? What is that showing? Are you loving God? Are you loving others? Those are our two aims. In Matthew 5:29-30, Jesus said, if your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out, throw it away. For it's better that you lose one of your members than your whole body be thrown into hell. If your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. For it's better that you lose one of your members than that your whole body go into hell. Now, is Jesus being literal? No, he's not saying to literally pull out your eye and cut off your hand. He's making the point, though, you got to be ruthless with this stuff. You got to look at what's getting in the way of following Jesus and say, no, get rid of it. Not allow it. It's kind of okay. I know it's not great, but oh well, it's okay. No, get rid of those things. Because this is what really matters, loving God and loving others. So how can you reshape the things in your life to prioritize God? If you say God's the most important thing, how can you live so that your life actually looks like that? And now you might look around and be like, well, big deal I'm on my phone all the time. Big deal that I pull away from people and I'm just living my own little private life. Big deal. That's what everyone does. Keep in mind, as Christians, we're not called to live like everyone else. We're called to live differently. Now, real quick, I'll just give you a personal example. I'm not saying you should do this. I'm not saying oh, it's amazing that I did this. I'm just saying something that I did. So what I actually did, I'm recording this on my iPhone, my smartphone, but I actually turned my smartphone into a dumb phone. So what I did, I went on there and I got rid right away of social media, took those off of there, and I also got rid of every other app that wasn't like necessary, that wasn't actually productive. And then what I did, I took my phone and I made it grayscale. So you look at it and it's just black and white, it's no color. And I don't understand all the science of it, but basically our brains, we like bright and shiny objects. And so when you make it not bright and shiny, you don't want to look at it as much. My goal was to try to cut down the time I spent looking at a screen. Not only that, but I also took off all the alerts. So if you ever like text or call me, do not expect an immediate reply. Because now what I do, instead of it alerting me that I need to check it, I decide when I'm going to check it throughout the day. I have times that I schedule to do that. So all these things were just to try to erase some distractions. And here's the thing. I thought it would be really hard. I thought it'd be really difficult. I don't miss any of that at all. And again, not saying you should do that, but my point is we have to look for the things that are under our control, that are distractions, the things that we're allowing to distract us that don't have to be there, and then get to a place where we say, is this helping or hurting my walk with Jesus? And I know that was an extreme example. People look at me like I'm a monk or something crazy. Even more extreme than that though, Pastor Wells, a flip phone. Talk to him about that. Way more extreme, but making the same point. We're getting rid of distractions, getting rid of things that are getting in the way. Now, are those things bad in of themselves? Is social media bad in of itself? Is a smartphone bad in of itself? No, they're not. They're all neutral. But if we allow them to distract us, we have to be asking, is it worth it? The world in general is vying for your attention. Here's the thing though, Jesus stands there, he says, look, if you want me, here I am. And if you go to him, once we get past the distractions that are all trying to grab our attention, trying to get a hold of us, we find with Jesus a yoke that is easy and a burden that's light. With Jesus, we find peace and joy in a world that is anything but those things. So yeah, distractions might not seem like a lot, but they can add up to a lot. And there are certain things, like I said, that will distract you because they just are getting in the way and they're just there. And sometimes we have to be distracted because things pop up that need our attention. What are the things that you are choosing, that you are allowing to distract you from following Jesus, from loving others, from being who he made you to be? Look at those things and maybe just with a critical eye think, do I need these? And if not, maybe try your life without them. See how it goes.